Hi, this is Mark Thayer. Thanks for tuning in. This is my channel about studio lighting for still life and product. If you haven't seen the first episode yet, and you're relatively new to studio lighting, you might want to check that one out. It gives sort of a broad overview of different kinds of lighting in the studio, and in the future episodes we will build on some of what we learned in that first episode. However, this episode is very specific. It is about one particular product that I use a lot in the studio, and it's called Rosco Mirror Shrink. It's a highly reflective material, and the reason it's called shrink is because if you mount it to a wooden frame, a sturdy wooden frame, and hit it with a heat gun, it shrinks tight and looks very much like a glass mirror. It's a product primarily used in the film industry, and they make very large ones and shrink them up tight, and you would think you're looking into a large glass mirror. And for obvious reasons, it's a nice thing to have because it's light, it doesn't break. You can't use it in the wind because it will wobble, but has lots of good uses in the film industry. I use it here in the studio lots of different ways too, and we're going to explore some of those today. I use it on wooden frames also, like this one. And this one gives, in this format, handled in this manner, it gives the strongest reflection, the closest to a glass mirror. This one's a little older, so it's sagged a little bit, but it still has a pretty good effect, a lot like a glass mirror. And again, you could use a glass mirror, but it has all the obvious issues with glass and mirrors. This is the same material, and it's just taped to a card. It's a little less like a mirror. It gives sort of a wavy reflection, which can be nice also. And then this is the same material stuck to a card with double-faced tape. And the nice thing about them is you can cut them to any size and shape that you want. Fully customizable. If you want to mount it to a frame, I use these guys. These are canvas stretchers that you get in an art supply store. They come in various lengths, and you can combine them to make rectangles and squares any size you want, really. They come in a much heavier duty version of this that will accept crossbars. So, because when this stuff shrinks up tight, it will pull a weak frame in, and you'll get lots of wavy and wobbly and nothing good if you're looking for a mirror. We're also going to explore some of this. This is a lot of fun, and it's way more fun to see than it is for me to talk about, trust me. As far as our set goes today, pretty straightforward. One light. A 10-degree grid on top of a magnum reflector. If you saw the first episode, you know about this guy. It's focusable, and I can bring it down to a narrow beam and confine it to my set. Gives us a nice specular light that will show up really well with these reflectors. I have a camera mounted overhead, and we're going to switch to that, and we'll get a much better bird's eye view of the set while we work with these reflector cards. So let's get started. Okay, and here we are with our camera directly over the set. Our light's off to the right, and I've placed a black card between the source and our subject to skim some of the light off the background. I don't want any of that light striking the background directly so that we can really see the effects of the cards that much better. Let's get started right away with the most reflective of all of our cards, which is the one where the material is shrunk over a wooden frame. So here it is, full blast. So as you can see, it almost looks like a second source, and in many senses, it is a second source. It's almost a mirror, so it's very nearly a direct reflection of our primary source, and you can't really tell it from that source. You can see that the highlight on the left side is just as bright as the highlight on the right side. You still see some waves in this reflection because of the ripples in the material, and I'll show you what happens if you push on the material from behind. These are dents that I'm making from the back side with my fingers, and it disrupts that mirrored surface. If we hold it up higher, shadows come closer, and it gets dimmer because it's catching less and less of the light source on the right side. Okay, there's the bright one. Now let's switch to the card that has the material just taped to the edges. You'll see the difference. It's still very, very bright, but there's a waviness to it that you can see. If I turn it 90 degrees, you'll see that waviness from another direction. It's still very hard. Still a very, very bright reflection. And again, moving it around changes its characteristics. The nice thing about this, and I'll put it on its corner and you can get a sense of what I'm talking about. The nice thing about having the material mounted to a card is that you can shape the card any way you want. You can cut it into strips, you can cut it into different shapes. And that shape that you cut the card into will determine the shape of your reflection. You can even move this card around to the side, of course, and catch light from here. You can even move it closer to the light than the subject itself and kick some back this way. Not going to be as bright, but you can still get it done. Now I'm just going to switch to a smaller card so you can see how effective these can be as well. If you just want to pick up a very small area, put a highlight on it, use a very small card. Just like that. You can see what I mean about how interesting this can be with different shapes of cards. You can use it artistically, but it also is a very strong tool for if you're trying to light product and get a very, very specific area to light up for you. Now we're going to move into the really fun bit. We're going to use this crinkly one. Drum roll, please. Right? So fun. If you look at the shadows, you'll see that there are many, many shadows. Because with this mirror being faceted the way it is, each of those facets sends the light off in a slightly different direction. So it's like having a whole bunch of tiny little sources all aimed in a slightly different direction. The further away you move the card, the softer those reflections become. The closer in you get it, the more defined all that becomes. We made a mirror here in the studio once that was 4 feet by 8 feet, and it looked like this. We were trying to simulate reflections of the sun coming off the water, and it looked pretty good. And there you have it. A wide variety of ways to use this product in the studio. I did mention earlier that I also use this product on location, and it's very powerful out there as well. And one example of the way I use it on location is we have some fairly large boards that we use. And if we're shooting models, for instance, in an area that's in heavy shade, and the sun is 30 feet that way, or the sunshine is hitting the ground 30 feet over there. And we want to get some light into where the models are. We like where they are because perhaps they're on cobblestones with a brick building behind and it looks really nice, but there's no light in there. We take these mirror boards and we bounce light from over there into our scene. Now we don't bounce it directly on the models, generally speaking, because it'll be too harsh. It's open sunlight being kicked in by a giant mirror, too much. What we do is we put a softer reflector card near them and we kick the sunlight into the reflector card. It provides a beautiful soft fill on our talent. So that's it. Rosco Mirror Shrink in the studio and on location. Thanks very much. This is Mark Thayer. If you enjoyed this, please do subscribe. I would appreciate it. And we'll be back soon. Thank you.